Hello and happy Tuesday, everybody. This is our final event of our open house this week, and I really feel like I saved one of the very best for last. Really, I do. I've been excited about this since I got the idea from my daughter when I was talking with her about you, Kerri, and what you do. And she was like, wow, your moms would so love to hear about this. And I was like, ding, yeah, they
Yay.
would. So this is Kerri Miller. She is a really good friend of mine, and she lives in Massachusetts. The name of her company is Feng Shui Pathways, and she wrote a book called Feels Better, Flows Better, Feng Shui for Inspired Living. So how can that be bad? But I just kind of wanted to see if you would introduce yourself and tell me, like, what is Feng Shui? Because up until a very short time ago, when I met you, I really had no idea what it was.
Yeah. Had you ever heard of it before?
Like in the fringe somewhere, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, something weird. I don't know what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. That's usually how most people are. And Feng Shui is an ancient Chinese practice, and it's been practiced in the East for like thousands of years. And it's made its way over the last couple of decades into the West. And really, it's this kind of a magical practice of looking at how unseen energies are flowing through your space and how it's affecting you. So we're looking at Qi, which is a vital life energy, and it exists all around you, and it exists within ourselves and within everything we surround ourselves with. And that energy flow can get stuck from various things. There can be lots of heavy things in the space that are carrying lots of energy and emotion. And so that weighs the energy of the space down, and it doesn't flow very good. Or we can just have lots of stuff in the way, and then the energy can't move around. And when that energy is not flowing in a positive way, it can impact how you feel in the space and how you are able to thrive or not in life. So it's a really powerful practice to become aware of your surroundings and how they're influencing you.
Yeah, who knew? Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people know. Did you grow up knowing about this, or how did you come to it, come to learn about it?
Yeah, I think intuitively as a kid, I always was aware of how my surroundings affected me. I used to move my furniture around randomly for no reason at all, drive my mom crazy. And I think I was just reacting, if things felt stuck, or if I was feeling a lot of energy and emotion around something, I would just move stuff. I would just pick stuff up and rearrange things. And it always felt better for me. So in that way, I think I was aware of it. But when I was in my late 20s, I stumbled across the topic of Feng Shui. I had actually just bought a new condo, and I was decorating, which, so I wanted the space to look nice. But I was also on this path of self-growth. So, and Feng Shui is kind of this combination of both things. It allows both things to happen. And so I picked up a book about Feng Shui, and I started applying what it said and noticing the difference and noticing results and noticing more ease and flow in my life and more of what I wanted. So I just kept doing it. And now here I am, like 25 years later, still talking about it.
And it's a real thing in your life that you practice in your home, and your family
Yeah,
participates?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. We are, I think it's more forced on them because it's so important to me. Some people are more aware of it, and other people, don't really feel like they're bothered by their surroundings so much, or maybe don't notice it as much. But I definitely talk about it all the time, and I'm definitely, raising the bar for everybody else in the space.
Yeah. And I mean, ever since I met you and started learning about it, I've also been so curious about it. And it's funny because I think a lot of times kids do that where they rearrange their room, and it's kind of interesting. Like they don't really even realize
Yeah.
what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
But it's so true when you're stuck and you move. I just moved my bedroom around this past weekend, and when you walk in the room, it's just like, you
Yes.
know?
A big difference. And sometimes you just need a freshen up, right? Because we as human beings, our energy is always changing and evolving, and our goals and aspirations change. And so it's really about having your surroundings keep up with you so that they're continuing to support you energetically and really help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah. So you know who my audience is.
Yeah.
It's my moms that have lost a child. And so this may not on the surface seem like just the typical tool that we might turn to unless we knew some of the ideas behind it. And I just really felt like one of the challenges that we have as moms is dealing with their stuff, the stuff in the house, the stuff that we have to clear out of somewhere else if they happen to live somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, their room and what to do with that. And then also, you know, just how to honor them in our space without it being like a negative thing
Right.
instead of a positive thing. So I know that you haven't lost a child, and I'm so grateful and glad that you haven't, but I know that you have had grief in your life.
Yes.
And so I'm sure that there's been times where you've applied it.
Definitely.
What did you feel? What did you feel when I said to come and talk to this group? What popped up for you?
I just feel like there is such a huge potential for helping the grieving process by being aware of the energy within your space and how you're holding on to it or allowing it to flow. And so, you know, I think initially when you first lose somebody, the comforting thing to do is to hold on to their stuff and to, you know, to look at their stuff and reminisce and honor it and, you know, connect to the person that you've lost through those items. And I think that's a big, you know, positive part of the healing process. But I think that there can become a shadow side to that, because as you're going through your sadness and releasing your grief, sometimes those items, because they are energetic, can pick up the energy of your sadness and your grief. And so at some point, some things can end up becoming anchors that keep you stuck in that grief process instead of, you know, letting it go, instead of processing it. And so, you know, your home can be this really powerful place where you can come to accept and heal from your loss, or it can become a prison to the grief and the emotion that you're holding on to, and the memory that you're unable to release. So there's this really fine line. And I think if you're aware of it, you know, I always think back to, I think I heard you tell a story about you going to Zumba for the first time. And it was one of the first times where you felt like you remembered being joyful again, or having fun, or being separate from that grieving mother identity. But the thing is, you can have those moments, but if you go back into a home or a space that's holding that energy of the grief and the sadness and the loss, you're gonna, you know, get sucked back down into that energy. And so even though you found relief, you're going to keep coming back to this place that's holding you in what you're really trying to heal and eventually move forward from. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Oh my goodness. Yes. So much.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm sure that as you work with people in their homes, right? Sometimes.
Yep.
I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of them have the same issue with and not even really realizing what they're doing by holding on to some of those things.
Right. And, you know, sometimes it can be something really significant. You know, the person has lost somebody close to them and has created, you know, I've walked into homes where, you know, where you look, there is a memory or a memento about that person. And they are not moving on. Like, your home is a reflection of what's going on inside of you. That's like one of the biggest feng shui principles, is that it's reflecting what's going on inside of you. And so if you're not letting go and you're not moving forward, it will be reflected in your environment. And so I can see from that there, you know, no matter where you turn, there's a reminder of that person and a reminder of that loss. And so there's no place within the home for that person to go an escape from that identity or that energy or that feeling. So, and so other people, are really good at maybe releasing a lot of things, and creating one space where there's a place to honor that person. I think it's important to know that the items and your relationship with the items that you have kept to honor that person will change over time. So it's really helpful to just keep checking in with all the things and give yourself permission to release the ones that maybe have become imprinted with that sadness, or that are weighing you down, or that are not lifting you up and energizing you anymore as you pay attention to them.
I mean, you can understand why someone would be reluctant to give up, because they
Yeah.
feel like that's one of the last things they have left of their person. And so by giving up that physical item, that somehow they're giving up on their child or, their loved one in some way.
Yeah.
So how do you, when you come across that feeling for someone, how do you talk to them? How do you explain to them a way to do this that makes sense without being so hurtful?
Yeah. So a lot of times, it's about really connecting with the item, right? And in a really authentic way, holding the item, connecting with it, getting quiet, and then really honestly having a conversation with it. Like it seems like an inanimate object, but it has, like I said, it has this energy, and it is a living, energetic thing. And so you can really connect with it on that higher plane, that energetic plane, and have a conversation with it. And, is this item, are you still serving me? Do I still feel good when I hold you and look at you? And if you really take a moment to listen and to feel the feelings that come up, you can just know intuitively whether it's holding you back or supporting you. It's doing one of those two things. And sometimes it's not really even about the item itself or how to figure out what to do with the item itself. It's really about, have you resolved the grief process? Have you allowed yourself to feel all the feels?
Yeah, and by doing that, you could get through some of that just by allowing yourself to feel the feelings that
Yeah.
that item brings up.
Yeah, definitely.
I know for me, it was definitely a process where initially I thought, I'm not getting rid of anything. Nothing is changing. I'm leaving everything just as is. And it didn't make sense to give things away or get rid of them or donate them or whatever. But then as time went on and I would see an item, it would come to me what to do with that item.
Yeah.
Like it finally made sense to give it to a friend or to share it with someone. So it is definitely like a healing thing when you're ready.
Right. Yes, it's definitely, and everybody has their own timeline, right? So you can't hold yourself, accountable to what somebody else did. But it really is, it sounds like you really tapped in and to your own guidance and intuition and knew when it was right to release something. And that's a big part of it. So it's kind of like breathing. Like in order for something new to come in, for fresh air, for you to breathe fresh air, you have to breathe out. And it's the same thing with holding on to stuff. You need to release in order to make room for the new to come in. So there's going to be a part of the grieving process where you don't want anything new. And then there'll be a part of the grieving process where you're ready and you are open to new adventures, new opportunities, and you need to make space for that. And so releasing those items is a big part of that process of allowing energetic room for the healing to take place and for kind of scars to build over and for you to move on.
Yeah. I know in one situation, I had left a part of my son's closet alone and not done anything, toys and everything from an 8-year-old. And it was several years before we moved. And I waited until the end. It was like it was a block. I knew it was going to be something I had to do. And I just kept putting it off and putting it off. And then finally, it was like the day before we were moving, I had to empty the closet and get the house empty. And I was so regretful that I hadn't done exactly what you said in being able to take the time to hold the Legos and the clothes and the things that, if I had had time, would have been actually really sweet and sentimental. And then I
Right.
think I could have parted with them. It was just a very uncomfortable process to do it the way I did it.
Yeah, it sounds very abrupt.
Yeah,
And it
abrupt,
is, you know,
exactly.
it really can be a beautiful process when you take the time to connect with the item and, you know, resolve all the feelings around it and then release it without, you know, so that that item moving forward isn't even carrying that stuff with it, because, you know, it's almost like
Mm,
there's, it has that energy that it carries forward to wherever it goes. So if you can release, you know, your energetic connection to it in a healthy way, it's almost like the item is
it's free.
destined, yeah,
Yeah,
destined and free in a way. So
yeah.
very powerful.
I didn't realize what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And I think that there's so much energy involved, like people, like anything, anytime you even if there isn't a loss related to it, if you're clearing out clutter or a closet, there's so much energy and emotion attached to that stuff, which is, it's hidden emotion and hidden energy. And that's why we get stuck and blocked and sometimes don't go do it. It's not because we don't have the time or we don't want to be bothered. It's because we don't want to deal with that energy and emotion
Yeah, we
that
know
is
it's going to
attached to
dig
it
up
all.
some things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so giving yourself the space to release that gently is a little bit better than kind of just like cutting the cord and letting it go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's something to give thought to so that you're not in that position,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah.
So, what about when you feel you're ready to do that and you figure out a way to do whatever you're going to do with the stuff? What about having a place for someone in your home,
Yeah.
even though they're not there anymore? Do you have any ideas about that?
I do. I mean, I think that, you know, as your process, as you go through the process, if you can sort of very intentionally and deliberately arrange a space that is set up to honor the person that you've lost, and it's a place where you can go to remember them and connect with them, but also a place where you can grieve, you know, privately and allow those emotions to bubble up and be released, but also a place where you can close the door and leave it behind you, and places where you can go within your home where that is not what's always going on. So I think that's a powerful part of the process, is to create that space, and maybe even to create a daily ceremony or a daily ritual around visiting it and having that connection, lighting a candle, um, you know, ringing a bell, something like that, that keeps the, you know, allows you to stay connected for as long as you need to do that, and then also allows you to step away from it when it's time to do that.
Oh my goodness, I love that idea.
Yeah.
I think there are some of the moms that are in my group that do a similar thing, a
Yeah.
candle or a daily visit to a certain picture or place in their
Yeah.
home.
And I think it's like, especially in the first stages of grief, when you're, you know, there's just so much energy and emotion coming up. Like if you think of it, all that grief within inside of you, emotionally bubbling up, and the crying and the tears to release it. Like that's a powerful process that we have to go through, because if we hold it in, then we physically become unwell. Like we can't hold in that energy and emotion without getting sick. So if you release that energy, that's powerful for you. But if you're consistently releasing it into the space and the space is not getting any release or relief, then it's building up, right? So the energy is, it's expressing from you, but then you're kind of swimming in it. And so it
Wow.
can be really hard to move. Again, it can be hard to move out of that state. So, you know, a daily ritual also of opening up the doors and windows, letting some fresh air in, moving things around a little bit, maybe shaking things up and dusting them off, or ringing a bell or lighting a candle to help transmute and clear that energy out of the space so that you're not living in it all the time. It's kind of the same thing as being able to close that door. and step out of it for a little bit. You've got to give yourself those moments as you heal to not be in the middle of it.
Yeah. And I mean, you're everyone else in the home can feel is susceptible to the same energy too, right? So even if you're the one who's breaking down, because like for example, the moms are usually the ones
Yeah,
that have so much emotion, that everyone in the house is being touched by it, even if they're not even physically seeing her do it.
absolutely. Yeah. So, and I mean, and the energy, like you can walk into the room and you can know when somebody's sad, or you can walk into the room and know when there's just been an argument. That's the energy that's dissipated out, but it's still in the space. And so if you're not clearing it regularly, then, you can be drawn back into it, but the other people in the space will pick up on that too. And they'll start to be absorbing your feelings and your, it'll be altering how they feel about the situation. So it's really powerful to be paying attention to how your space feels, how your surroundings feel, and seeing if you can, like, if you are, I'm sure there's, those times where you can't get out of bed and you're, it's a real struggle to find a way to move and to move through it. So if you're feeling stuck and you can't move through that grief internally, sometimes it's really great just to shake things up in the house, because that gets energy moving around you, which helps the energy move through you as well. So you can almost use it as like a back door to helping to release the grief if you're not moving through the process
Yeah,
in
it's
a
a
comfortable way.
tool. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
What are some of the basics, maybe not related to grief, but just in general? What are some of the basics of feng shui that people can get started with,
Yeah.
that
So, well,
would
I
help
think
them start understanding how this is all going to work?
I think the first thing is to just be aware and understand that everything around you is alive and connected to you. So imagine this invisible energetic cord between you and everything that you can see around you. Like, and that, especially as moms, we wonder why we're tired and exhausted all the time. It's because we're carrying that energy of all the things that we maintain in the house. And then add on top of it, the grief, and adding, maintaining the items of somebody that you've lost. And it becomes really heavy because that energetic cord is like laced with all that emotion. And if you don't, start, if you allow it all to accumulate, it becomes really heavy and you get stuck and you can't move forward. So first of all, just noticing how you feel in the space, like taking a minute when you walk in the door and noticing, do I feel good when I walk in? Do I have a sense of dread for being here? Does it feel heavy? Do I, feel uplifted, or do I feel drained? And noticing how that energy is within your space. And then paying attention to what might be contributing to it. If you have a lot of clutter, typically that means that the energy is not flowing very well. So, releasing clutter is a big way to get the energy flowing and to shift the energy pretty instantly, and to make the space feel good. People always say that, oh, I cleaned out my closet this weekend and I feel so light and free after doing it. I wish I had done it a month ago. That's a really, easy way to create a shift in the way the space feels. And to do that, like we talked about, connecting in with the items around you, especially the items of a loved one who you've lost, and notice if it's energizing you and supporting you and makes you feel good, or if maybe there's heavier emotions like regret or obligation or guilt attached to it that are really weighing you down and keeping you stuck. And then, we have this really fun tool in Feng Shui called the Bagua map, and which basically is a map for every house. And it connects to, there's 9 different life areas. So there's wealth, there's romance, there's creativity, there's family, and more. And you can, like, it's really fun to kind of figure out the map of your house and then start deliberately arranging your house to bring energy to those different parts of your life. So if you want to honor somebody that you've lost, there are some intentional parts of your home where you can really do that in a very energetic way, and maybe even enhance your connection to that person.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So you're basically, when you're naming all those, did you say 9 areas?
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to make sure that you've got them all covered?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's interesting too, because maybe you'll map out your space and realize that, maybe the area that's related to relationships that's where your junk room is, and that's where it's all cluttered. And funny, but you're not really getting along very well in your relationship these days. So there can be like it almost ends up being, your house becomes this map to what's going on in your life, or even within you, that you're not dealing with, or that you could pay attention to and call some energy and create some shift and some positive change in.
It almost it takes a little bit of courage, just like anything that you try to learn about and grow from. It takes a bit of courage to take a step and try something new or learn about what you're talking about. But it seems like the benefits could be so worthwhile if you really focused on doing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And you know what? I like to think of your home as a vision board, and like as a manifesting tool. So if you're, maybe in your mind, you're thinking that you want one thing in life, and if you can line up the things you're speaking so that aligns with what you want, and then you can line up your surroundings so that they're also sending that same message to the universe about what you want, it can really become this magnificent manifesting tool that helps you create the life that you want. But if you're kind of closing your eyes off to what's really going on in your space, you're probably also closing your eyes off to what's really going on within you, and what your blocks are, and what your limiting beliefs are, and what you're avoiding, so that you're not moving forward. Does that connection make sense at all?
Absolutely.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it does to me, but again, if it's a very new concept to someone, they really have to, you really have to think about it. But you can just connecting with some of the little things that you said, like moving your room around when you were a kid,
Yeah.
or when you're holding a certain item and how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say this is a challenge that I've had. I have the items of clothing that Nick wore when he died, the day he died. And so he was in the hospital and they cut all his clothes off of him. And so when we went home without him, those clothes came with us. And I never, like, it's weird. I don't know what to do with them. And but those clothes have energy. I mean, I'm telling you that when I get near the box, it's up in my closet. And when I get near the box, I can feel it.
Yeah.
And it changes how I feel. But yet, here's the struggle of a mom who's lost a child, is just, can I just pitch that? Can I just throw that away? What makes sense for me? And still here I am 24 years on the journey, and still I haven't had that answer given to me yet.
Yeah. And it will be different for every single person out there. But what I will say is, in the same way that I talked about kind of clearing your space, in Feng Shui, we do this process called an energy clearing, where we, kind of clear out the old, stuck, heavy energies and emotions that have been hanging around in the space. And then we call in fresh energy and kind of, protect the space from that. And that it's an instant way to freshen up your space. And some of the tricks that I talked about, like lighting a candle and ringing a bell, are simple ways that you can do that on your own. But even with those items that are heavy, that you're really connected to, if you were to, take them out of the box and maybe ring a bell over them, or maybe put them out in the sun for a day, or other ways that could just shift the energy around them and maybe clear some of that energy that is stuck and connected and holding you to that attachment, it may help you get some insight and some clarity on what the next step is. So rather than just kind of stuffing it away somewhere and not dealing with it, if you can even just take it out and hold it for a minute, or look at it, or put it in a different closet, or anything to just kind of keep the energy moving around it can be really powerful. Even if you were to go to an antique store and pick up an antique dresser and bring it into your house, that is carrying the energy of where it's come from and who it's been with. And so sometimes you can do that, and then the space feels different, and then you feel different. So there are ways to clear that kind of energy away from things. And once the energy is cleared, you get the clarity on what to do with the object itself. Because once that was just, a t-shirt or a pair of shorts or a belt on a clothing rack in a store somewhere, and there was no story attached to it and no connection. So that's all really what we create around the item. And so if you can start to remove those layers of energy and the stories that are attached to it energetically, then it becomes easier to figure out what to do with the physical item itself.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
So all these things you're talking about, I mean, you're telling us, and I suppose we can read up on it or, learn about it more. But how do you actually work with people? Like, do you go into their homes? Do you do online stuff? How do you help people with these types of problems or issues?
Yeah, so I work both on site, so I can go into people's homes, and I can also do it remotely. So, just like we're using a tool here for video conferencing, we can video into your space. And they both get the same amazing results. The process is a little bit different for me, but the results always end up being the same. And so I go into the space in one of those two ways. There's an intake questionnaire asking about what's going on and what challenges you would like to move beyond, or where you feel stuck. And, then I take a look at the space, and I have this knack for being able to kind of see where things are stuck and where the sticking point is that's kind of preventing you from moving forward, I guess. And so after the tour, we work together over a couple of weeks to make gentle shifts. Usually it's pretty subtle. Sometimes it's a little bit of decluttering. Sometimes it's a little bit of, shifting furniture. Other times it might be changing a paint color or adding some colors and balancing the elements in the space. Sometimes it's using that map that I talked about and really calling energy to different parts of your life. But we talk about the ways, the suggestions to shift the energy and make it feel more positive, and also maybe harness it and direct it to parts of your life that need it more than others. So I love what I do. It's a really powerful process.
I mean, I can tell, your passion, and just because I speak to you often, I know, the types of things that happen for your people. What's a good example of somebody that put one of these practices in place and was able to change something for that?
Yeah.
Can you think of anything right off the top of your head?
Well, there's this one story that I talk about in my book about, I went into this woman's house. She was a single mom. She had 2 adult children, and I think she was, kind of empty nesting, but we kind of walked around her space, and we talked about the items that she had around her, the things, the artwork that she had on the wall, and why she had chosen specific pieces. Because I don't tell you to take something away without knowing the story behind it. But there was this one piece of artwork on the wall, and I said, tell me about that. What does that symbolize to you? What does it mean? And she told me this. She like stopped and started crying, and she said, I bought that years ago when I was married to my husband, and it was a picture of a man and a child on a horseback, and a woman and a child on another horse. And she said at the time she was married, happily married, the responsibilities of the children was equally within the marriage was equally balanced. And when she bought it, that's what it represented. And after they got divorced, and she really became the child caregiver, and he disappeared and wasn't really holding his weight. And so for 24 years or so, she had this piece of artwork in the space that didn't represent what was really going on anymore, and really was holding a lot of resentment towards that situation. And nobody had ever asked her, and she had never asked herself, and she had never realized the energy that that one piece was holding, and how much of that, that divorce, grief and loss situation was weighing on her. So
Wow.
it can be so powerful, like something completely subtle, and you don't realize where the energy and emotion of that situation is being held and how it's blocking you. So
Makes so much sense. I'm sure she wasn't looking at that painting every day going, oh, my ex-husband. Oh. She
exactly.
didn't even realize, until you asked her.
Right. And it's just this underlying, energy or thought or emotion that she's had that she wasn't acknowledging and didn't even know was there. But once she did, it creates this whole release. So then, whether the object stayed or not, it doesn't matter, because now the hidden block is kind of exposed.
Yeah. Did she get rid of it?
I think she put it in the basement and was planning on figuring out what to do with it. So yeah.
She got something new and better, I'm sure.
Yeah. But and it's true, like it's amazing how those things can hold you, like that the physical object can keep you held in that situation that you've long moved beyond.
Right.
So yeah.
And you don't even realize what is this weird lingering feeling that I have. You don't even realize it.
Right.
I know that you told me you had some tips for my people, and I feel like maybe you probably gave some of them out as we were talking.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you wanted to?
Let me summarize, like, what I think is important.
Okay.
First, at some point, see if you can create a space that honors the person that you've lost and their memory, and allows you to have a private space to connect with them and honor their life and grieve, right? But also a place that you can close the door, and other places in your home where that, where you're able to step away from that, so that you can start to experience life beyond it. And so I think it's important to just give yourself both places. I think it's important to clear the energy, remember that you're grieving and you're releasing it into your space, but you have to allow it out of your space as well, so that you can, have some healing energy come in as well. So, open the doors and windows, shake a towel around the space, ring a bell, turn on some music, light a candle, anything that will help get the energy moving, and so that it will circulate and heal, like allow some healing to come in. And then finally, check in with those items that you're holding on to periodically, whether they're items that are related to the loss itself or just stuff that you have. Be sure to be checking in with it and see whether what you're holding on to is serving you in some way that supports where you are, or whether it's actually holding you back from what you really truly want. And the other thing I would say is that as you move things around or shift things, it's important to know that you're shifting energy too. It's not just stuff that you're moving around. So sometimes when you're moving that energy around, that's when the feelings bubble up, and that's when the emotions come out. So give yourself space for that, to happen.
Yeah,
which I think is what you didn't do when you were moving and you went through the closet. You didn't create that space for all those emotions to be resolved as they came up.
And it still bothers me. And that was a long time ago, but it still bothers me that day, I remember the feeling of that day, and that it just wasn't it didn't feel good to me how I did it. So,
yeah.
So as you're saying some of these things, I know the one thing that maybe somebody would be thinking is, listen, this is my family picture. This is my family. This is the last time we were all together. I'm not getting rid of that. And I don't think you're saying to get rid of it, right? But there's some other things that you can do to shift the feeling maybe of that picture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say two things. It doesn't have to be in every room, right? You could maybe it's on the wall for a few years. Maybe it's time for it to come down and go into a photo book on the coffee table. Maybe there's times where it goes into, maybe there's a time where you pull it back out of the photo album, on the coffee table, and you share it as gifts for people at Christmas time later on to honor that person. So it's always going to evolve, but it doesn't, I guess it doesn't have to be like the centerpiece for all of time. So, part of that is listening to your intuition and knowing when it's okay to put that away. And also, to do that energy clearing around it, maybe just, if you're not sure, maybe ring a bell around it, maybe, put a candle in front of it for a little while, maybe put it outside in the sunshine for a bit, or maybe put it away for 30 days and see whether you miss it. And give yourself permission to put it right back where it was before.
Right.
I had a client that we talked about a whole set of bookshelves, and she wanted to give some of them away, and she put some in her car, and they were in her trunk for like a month, and she ended up bringing them back in and putting them back on her shelf because over time she couldn't release them. She was really connected to them. So honor that and give yourself permission to, to keep it or to put it back where it was before if you're missing it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Very good. I want to be able to share all your information when this video gets shared. So if there's if somebody really wanted to contact you like right away as soon as they watch this, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can definitely find me on Facebook under Feng Shui Pathways. And then my website is Kerri Miller Consulting, and all of my information about all the ways to work with me are there. And I'm happy to do a call, a complimentary call to find out what's going on and whether or not what we would do together would be useful or not for the situation.
Yeah, I can totally see it being useful for somebody that's open, that's ready to accept and try to understand what all this energy is doing in your home.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I appreciate you so much for doing this. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or?
Well, I feel like we've covered everything. I just, be aware of your surroundings and the influence that they're having over you. Sometimes you can feel a certain way and it's not coming from within you. You're actually being exposed to it within your environment. And so, if you're feeling like you're grieving and not moving through your grieving process anymore, maybe it isn't you. Maybe it's the stuff around you or your surroundings. And you have a lot of power over that. And if you, shake things up a little bit on the outside, sometimes it can help relieve it on the inside.
That's such good advice and good information. Thank you so much. I'm looking here to see Laura Roselli said hi. I don't if anyone has any questions at all, I guess I should have said this a minute ago or two because it takes a minute for them to come through. But, I will pass along anything that comes up after people watch, and
absolutely.
Make sure that they have all your, all the ways to connect with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me and for recognizing this as a empowering tool that women can use as they go through this process.
Yeah, I am excited to put some of this in play in my life, especially after talking about those clothes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.